Ethan Blackwell sat in the window seat of the Winter Garden Cafe, watching snow fall past the twinkling lights outside. At 38, he'd sworn off blind dates entirely. This was his concession to his sister Lauren, who'd begged him to try just one more time. "One more," she'd pleaded. "If this doesn't work, I'll never set you up again. I promise." So here he sat, CEO of Blackwell Industries, worth more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, waiting for another woman who'd researched his net worth before learning his name. He'd been on exactly 23 blind dates in the past 2 years. Each one had followed the same script. The woman would arrive dressed expensively, order the most costly items on the menu, and spend the evening asking carefully casual questions about his homes, his cars, his investment portfolio. By dessert, they'd be planning their future together. By the next morning, Ethan would be blocking another number. He'd told Lauren this was pointless, that maybe he was meant to be alone, that building a company from his grandfather's failing textile business into a global conglomerate had cost him the years when normal people found love. He'd sacrificed relationships for spreadsheets, family dinners for board meetings, connection for success. Now he had everything except someone to share it with. Ethan checked his watch. 7:15. She was 15 minutes late. He'd give her 5 more minutes, then leave. Another failed attempt. Another evening alone in his penthouse apartment with its stunning views and crushing silence. The cafe door opened, and Ethan looked up out of habit. A woman entered, her long blonde hair dusted with snow, pulling a little girl behind her. The woman wore a simple cream-colored dress that looked homemade, and the girl wore pink, clutching a teddy bear that had clearly seen better days. They looked lost, the woman scanning the cafe anxiously. She said something to the hostess, who pointed toward Ethan's direction. The woman's face went pale, but she nodded and started walking toward him, the little girl's hand firmly in hers. No, Ethan thought. Please no. Lauren wouldn't have set him up with someone who had a child. She knew his life had no room for that kind of complication. This had to be a mistake. The woman stopped at his table. "Ethan Blackwell?" "Yes, I'm Isabel Grant. I'm so sorry I'm late. The babysitter canceled at the last minute, and I couldn't leave Rosie alone. And I know this is completely inappropriate. Bringing my daughter to a blind date, but your sister said you were a kind person, and I thought maybe you'd understand. But I can see from your face that this was a terrible idea. So we'll just go—" "Please sit down," Ethan heard himself say. Isabel stopped rambling and stared at him. She had blue eyes that held equal parts hope and resignation, like someone who'd learned to expect disappointment, but still couldn't help wishing for something better. "Are you sure? I know this isn't what you signed up for." "Neither is being stood up, which is what will happen if you leave. Please." Isabel hesitated, then slid into the seat across from him. The little girl, Rosie, climbed into the chair beside her mother, setting her teddy bear on the table with grave importance. "This is Mr. Buttons," Rosie announced. "He's shy around new people, but he likes you because you have kind eyes." Ethan looked at this small child with blonde hair like her mother's, and a pink dress that was slightly too small, and felt something crack in his chest. "Thank you, Mr. Buttons. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in weeks." Rosie giggled, and the sound was like bells. "I really am sorry," Isabel said quietly. "Your sister didn't tell me you were— she said you were successful, but she didn't mention that you're the Ethan Blackwell. If I'd known, I never would have agreed to this, and I definitely wouldn't have brought my daughter to meet someone so far out of my league." "What did Lauren tell you about me?" Isabel looked embarrassed. "That you were lonely. That you worked too hard and had forgotten how to enjoy simple things. That you needed someone who'd see you as a person rather than a net worth. She said you were kind but sad, and that you deserved someone who'd make you laugh again." Ethan felt his throat tighten. That was exactly what Lauren had told Isabel, because it was true. "And what did she tell you about what I was looking for?" "Someone real. Someone who wasn't afraid to be honest. Someone who understood that happiness doesn't come from money." A server approached, and Isabel's expression turned panicked as she glanced at the menu. Ethan watched her eyes widen at the prices, saw her mentally calculating what she could afford. "The hot chocolate here is exceptional," Ethan said to Rosie. "Would you like some? And maybe some Christmas cookies?" Rosie's face lit up. "Can I, Mommy?" "We can't," Isabel started. "My treat," Ethan said firmly. "For all of us. I insist." He ordered hot chocolate and cookies for Rosie, tea and sandwiches for Isabel, and coffee for himself. When the server left, Isabel looked at him with something like wonder. "You're not leaving." "Why would I leave?" "Because I showed up with a 4-year-old. Because I'm wearing a dress I made myself instead of designer clothes. Because I can't afford anything on this menu. Because I'm clearly not what you expected." "You're right. You're not what I expected. The last 23 women I've gone on blind dates with, all dressed expensively, ordered champagne, and spent the evening asking about my vacation homes. You showed up in snow-dusted homemade clothes with your daughter and her teddy bear, worried about hot chocolate prices. You're absolutely not what I expected. You're better." Isabel's eyes filled with tears. "Don't be kind to me just because you feel sorry for me." "I'm not." "I'm being kind because your daughter's teddy bear said I have kind eyes, and I don't want to prove him wrong. And because you're the first person in 2 years who's looked genuinely uncomfortable about me paying for things. That's refreshing." Their orders arrived, and Rosie's delight over the hot chocolate made them both smile. She drank it carefully, creating a whipped cream mustache that made her look even more endearing. "Tell me about yourself," Ethan said to Isabel. "The real you, not the resume version." Isabel hesitated, then began to talk. She told him about being a single mother, about Rosie's father leaving when she was pregnant, about working as a seamstress from home, creating custom pieces for local boutiques, about barely making ends meet but finding joy in small things, about how Lauren had been her client, had bought 6 dresses over the past year, and had become a friend who'd insisted on setting her up with her brother. "I almost canceled 3 times, Isabel admitted. "I didn't think someone like you would want to meet someone like me. And I was right to worry, except you're not reacting how I expected." "How did you expect me to react?" "With disappointment. Maybe disgust. Definitely by leaving. Rich men don't date single mothers who live in 1-bedroom apartments and make their own clothes because they can't afford to buy them. This rich man is having the best first date he's had in years, so your expectations might need adjusting." They talked while Rosie colored on a kid's menu the server had brought. Ethan found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. Isabel was funny and self-deprecating, honest about her struggles without asking for pity. She talked about her dreams of opening her own boutique someday, about teaching Rosie to sew, about finding beauty in second-hand fabrics and forgotten patterns. "You love what you do," Ethan observed. "I do. It doesn't pay well, and I'll probably never be rich. But there's something magical about creating beauty from nothing, about taking someone's vision and making it real. Every dress tells a story, like the one you're wearing." Isabel looked down at her cream dress. "This was my mother's wedding dress. She died when I was 18. I couldn't bear to just keep it in a closet, so I altered it. Made it into something I could wear, something that keeps her with me." "Is that strange?" "It's beautiful," Ethan said, and meant it. Rosie started yawning, and Isabel checked her phone. "It's almost 8:30. Way past her bedtime. We should go." "Let me drive you home." "You don't have to. I want to." "Please." They gathered their coats, and Ethan led them to his car. He saw Isabel's eyes widen at the sleek black vehicle, but she didn't comment. Rosie fell asleep in her car seat within minutes. Mr. Buttons clutched tight. The drive to Isabel's neighborhood took them from the upscale downtown to a modest area where buildings needed paint and cars needed repairs. Ethan had never been to this part of the city, had never had reason to. "This is me," Isabel said quietly, pointing to a small apartment building. Ethan parked and helped carry sleeping Rosie upstairs. The apartment was tiny but immaculate, with a sewing machine in the corner and fabric draped over every surface. There were Christmas decorations made from construction paper and string lights that didn't all work. It was warm and lived in, and full of love. Isabel put Rosie to bed, then returned to find Ethan examining her work. "These are remarkable," he said, holding up a partially finished dress. "The detail work, the craftsmanship. Isabel, you're incredibly talented. Thank you. It's not saving the world or running a corporation, but it's mine. Don't diminish what you do. You create beauty and make people feel special. That matters. They stood in her small living room, surrounded by evidence of her artistry and her struggle, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. "Hope, can I see you again?" he asked. "You and Rosie, I mean. Maybe something less formal. The park or the children's museum or wherever Rosie would enjoy." "Why?" Isabel asked, her voice small. "I'm not glamorous or sophisticated. I can't attend fancy parties or understand business deals. I'm just a single mom trying to get by. Why would you want to see me again?" "Because in 3 hours you've made me laugh more than I have in months." "Because your daughter's teddy bear likes me. Because you wear your mother's wedding dress and find magic in second-hand fabric. Because you're real in a world where everyone else is performing. Because I've been on 23 blind dates, and you're the only person who's made me want a second one." Isabel's eyes filled with tears again. "I'm not a charity case. I won't be someone's good deed. You're not. You're someone interesting and talented who I'd like to know better. But I understand if this is too complicated. If dating someone in my position would make your life harder. I just hope you'll give us a chance." "One more date," Isabel said finally. "But somewhere Rosie appropriate. And you have to promise that if this isn't working, you'll tell me. I can't afford to get my hopes up. I promise. Though I think it's my hopes we should be worried about." That second date became a third, then a fourth. Ethan found himself rearranging his schedule to spend afternoons at the park, pushing Rosie on swings and teaching her how to identify birds. He attended a preschool play where Rosie played a reindeer and forgot all her lines, but still received a standing ovation from her mother and him. He learned about Isabel's world, so different from his own. The way she knew all her neighbors, how she bartered services with other small business owners, how she celebrated Rosie's tiny victories like they were Nobel Prizes. She taught him to see wealth in things he'd taken for granted. Time, laughter, the feeling of being genuinely wanted rather than needed for what he could provide. Isabel slowly opened up about her past. About Rosie's father, who'd left a note and disappeared before Rosie was born. About years of struggling alone, of pride that made her refuse help, of slowly learning that accepting kindness wasn't weakness. "I'm scared," she admitted one evening after Rosie was asleep. They were sitting in her small living room, drinking tea, surrounded by half-finished projects. "I'm scared that you'll realize we don't fit in your world. That Rosie and I will embarrass you. That this is all too good to be true and I'll wake up alone again." "I'm scared too," Ethan confessed. "I'm scared you'll realize I have no idea what I'm doing. That I've spent so long being the CEO that I've forgotten how to be just Ethan. That you deserve someone who was there from the beginning, not someone who's trying to figure it out 15 years too late. So we're both terrified?" "Apparently. Is that a good sign? I think it means we both care enough to be afraid of losing it." 3 months after that first date, Ethan made a decision. He was at a board meeting, discussing expansion plans and profit margins, when he realized he didn't care. Not the way he used to. The numbers on the screen meant less than Rosie's laugh or Isabel's smile or the feeling of being part of something real. He hired a COO to handle daily operations. He restructured his role to focus on vision and strategy, not execution. He cut his hours to reasonable levels. His board thought he was having a breakdown. His accountant worried he'd lost his edge. But Lauren understood. "You're finding balance," she said when he told her. Finally. For Christmas, Ethan didn't buy Isabel expensive jewelry or designer clothes. Instead, he rented a studio space in a good neighborhood and signed a 5-year lease. He filled it with sewing machines and fabric and everything a seamstress could need to start a real business. When Isabel walked in on Christmas morning, Rosie holding her hand, she burst into tears. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's an investment," Ethan corrected, "in a talented designer who's going to build something beautiful. The rent is paid for 5 years. What you do with it is entirely up to you. But Isabel, you deserve to dream bigger than survival. You deserve to build something that's truly yours." Isabel's boutique, The Button and Thread, opened 6 months later. It became known for custom pieces that celebrated individual style rather than following trends. Isabel hired 2 other single mothers, creating jobs that offered flexibility and dignity. Ethan proposed a year after that first snowy evening. Not with a massive diamond or an elaborate production, but simply in Isabel's studio, with Rosie present because she was part of this too. "I thought I needed someone from my world," Ethan said as he knelt. "Someone who understood business and galas and the weight of wealth. Instead, I found someone who taught me that I'd been living in the wrong world entirely. You showed me what matters. Time and laughter and hot chocolate mustaches and teddy bears with opinions. You and Rosie gave me a family when I'd accepted I'd always be alone. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to make you as happy as you've made me?" Isabel said yes through tears, and Rosie cheered so loud that Mr. Buttons surely approved. At their wedding, small and intimate despite Ethan's ability to host something lavish, Lauren gave a toast. "I set Ethan up on 23 blind dates before Isabel. 23 women who saw his bank account. Isabel saw him. She showed up late with her daughter and a teddy bear, wearing a dress made from her mother's wedding gown, worried about hot chocolate prices. And my brother, who I'd watched grow lonelier despite growing richer, finally came alive. This is what love looks like. Not perfection, but truth. Not performance, but presence. Two people brave enough to be real with each other." Years later, when Rosie was older, she'd tell people about her mom and stepdad's first date. "Mom brought me and Mr. Buttons," she'd explain. "She thought Dad would leave, but he stayed. And he kept staying. That's how you know it's real love. Not when someone shows up for the good parts, but when they stay for the complicated parts too. When they see your whole life and choose to be part of it." Ethan's final blind date had started as a concession, a last attempt to satisfy his sister's matchmaking impulses. It ended with him discovering that everything he'd been looking for had been waiting in a homemade dress, with a teddy bear chaperone and hot chocolate dreams. He'd thought it was a joke when he saw them walk in. Instead, they walked in and stole his heart, reminding him that the best things in life aren't found in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in small apartments full of fabric and love, in daughter's laughter and mother's dreams. In choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. Sometimes the last first date is the one that finally gets it right. If this story reminded you that real connection matters more than perfect circumstances, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment about a time someone surprised you by staying when you expected them to leave. We all carry complications. The gift is finding someone who sees them and stays anyway. That's not settling. That's choosing what actually matters.